Okay, we can start with the prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, all right. So what we'll do is we'll do a quick review of what we have done in the last couple of weeks, and we'll do today's class after that. So what we did was we discussed physical objects, stula sharira or stula objects, and then subtle objects, sukshma. Anyone have any questions about it? No? So just quick review. Physical objects are anything you can touch, you can feel, you can see, that are tangible, basically, tangible objects. On the other hand, subtle objects are objects that you can't see, but you know exist. For instance, sight, or you have radio waves, or you have sense of hearing. These things, you know they exist, without which you cannot have, or for instance, without sense of hearing, you can't know that you guys are not listening to what I'm saying without that. So these things exist, they are in this subtle form. The ears are the physical form. They are the tools with which you listen to things. So that's the difference between physical and subtle objects. So we discussed this in the past. And we even did a few examples last week. We then went on to understanding a little bit of physics. The reason we went into physics was because we wanted to understand the origins of the universe. We came to the conclusion that the scientists, they had a limitation. They did not know the origins of the universe. So then we moved on from science to spirituality, our spiritual texts like the Vedas, Upanishads, where they discussed that there is another entity that is the cause of all the causes in the universe. Just like in science, in our Vedas, in our Upanishads, we believe in cause and effect. And the cause of all causes, we discussed it, is the Brahman. Can I get just a couple of examples of what the Brahman is and isn't? Anyone? We discussed a few characteristics last time. Anyone? I can start if you wish. So we talked about the Brahman not having any attributes. Like, for instance, we have a physical body. It ages over time. So that's the guna, or attribute of the body. What are the others? Anyone? One or two? Nope. Okay. So we discussed that the Brahman does not change. It's motionless. It's actionless. It's eternal. Why? Because we discussed space-time, space and time, and all the objects that we discussed, the physical objects, the subtle objects, they all are a product of this Brahman, which means the Brahman does not change. There is no time factor with the Brahman. It is eternal. It is never born. It is not going to die, which means it is eternal. It's always been there. It will always be there. And it is existence itself. Okay. It does not have any desires. It is stainless or does not have any color. It is unchanging. We discuss that. No changes at all. It is formless. When we are talking about space, we are talking about 3 dimensions. We have a shape, we have a form, figure. When we look at something tangible, we know what sort of figure, shape, and form it has. But Brahman does not have any shape or form. It is eternally free and it is pure. So these are some of the attributes we spoke about last time. Then he went on to, I think we started discussing about Brahman in the form, with an example, in a dream, for instance. So we are sleeping and we are dreaming. All the characters, all the events that we see in our dream, they are created inside of us. The same way the entire universe, you, me, we are all created inside this Brahman itself. Okay? If you represent the Brahman in that dream state, you're not doing anything. You're just sleeping. But the characters in that dream, the events in that dream, they have action, they have motion, they have figures, they have shapes. It's the same way with the Brahman and this physical universe. You, me, we all have certain shape, certain attributes. There's events, actions, there's color, there's life, death, birth, all these things happening in this universe. But within the Brahman itself, there is nothing happening. It's just like that dream scenario that we discussed. We discussed a little further. I think there was confusion because I had a few questions. I will skip that and try and explain this in a little more detail today through examples, which might make it a little easier. So far we've discussed that Brahman is eternal and it's unchanging, nirguna, etc. We've talked about some of the characteristics there. We also discussed cause and effect. And for cause and effect, you need two things. One is the material cause, which means you need, and in the example of clay, clay is the material. But for you to make a figurine out of clay, you need some technical expertise. This is the intelligence. All right. So Brahman has both the material and the intelligence. And to explain this, we spoke about how is it possible for Brahman to have both the material cause and the intelligence. For that, we used a spider, for instance. The spider releases webs, it creates cobwebs, but that comes out of its own body. It itself is the creator, and it itself is the source of all that cobweb that it shoots out. The same way with our nails, with our hair. So this is how Brahman is described. Brahman itself is not changing, but it has that technical expertise and it provides all the raw material for the universe to be born and then dissolve. Now, we said that the Brahman is eternal. I'd like you to think about a circle. Is there a starting point in the circle? It can be anywhere, isn't it? So the Brahman is something like that. For instance, there is no starting point. There's no end point. It's just exists. Okay? And the universe is created and it dissolves. And it's always happened. It will always happen. The same way you and me, everything in this universe is created and dissolved it's been happening all the time. And for this you need the material cause and the intelligent cause. So that's why we were discussing that. Coming from there, I guess I wanted to explain a little more about the Brahman, the relationship between Brahman and us. So I'll use the examples I've used in the past. For instance, we used the clay example, so I'll use that again. I think there was a little bit of confusion last time. I had a couple of questions, so that is why I'm coming back, revisiting that one. So on one hand, we have clay, which is uh, shapeless, formless. You can use clay and create a figurine, give it some shape and form. Okay, you're giving that figurine an identity. Say, for instance, you've created a small shape of Mickey Mouse. Okay, you've given it an identity. That clay figure, when it disintegrates, it remains clay. It does not become something else. It's always clay. In the same way, you, me, and all, we are clay. So we are Brahman. When we dissipate, we are Brahman. That's it. That's as simple as it gets. We can look at a couple of other examples just to make more sense out of it. So let's take cotton. We get cotton from the cotton fields. That is the fabric uh, with which you make threads. Use the threads, you weave cloth, and you can make clothes out of it. Shirts, pants, saris, dresses, skirts. You can make sheets, bedspreads, towels, etc. Everything has its own purpose. In the same way, the Brahman is the fabric of all the entire universe. And each object, each and every entity in the universe has its own purpose. That includes you and me. Okay? The underlying material in that cloth, in that towel, you can cut a shirt and it no longer remains a shirt because the shape and form of that shirt has changed. But the underlying material, underlying fabric of it is cotton. That does not change. The same way you and me exist here today with shape and form. But when we die, when there's nothing, the underlying fabric is the Brahman. There's another popular example that's used to explain this. We have ocean. What's it made of? Water? Yeah. So it's water. You have waves that originate in the ocean and they die at the beach and they go back into the ocean, right? The waves that are formed, they are also water. They just shape and form of water, the rising and falling. It's the same with us. We are shapes of Brahman. Okay? Ultimately, we are the Brahman. You look at even the dream scenario. When you're dreaming, you have all these characters, all the events that's happening. When you wake up, none of that exists. Why? Because it is a part of you. You are it. The same way the Brahman. Brahman is the only truth. And there is only one Brahman. So when you say, I am, you're talking about Brahman. Everything else is an identity. Yes, I can say, my name is Chaitanya. That's an identity. I'm a male. That's an identity. I am thinking. You're still talking about your thoughts, which is part of the Brahman. Okay, everything, the underlying fabric of everything you know, you can think of is all Brahman. So the question was asked, so who's Vishnu, who's Shiva, who's Krishna, etc. What we have been discussing about Brahman, we've been talking about a Nirguna Nirakara, which means no shape, no form, no qualities. This is very difficult for us to comprehend. Very difficult for us to comprehend. But we need to understand the Brahman. Every layman, the idea behind Vishnu, Shiva, Shakti, all these gods was that the rishis wanted to make sure even the layman understood what the Brahman was, or at least they had an idea of what it was. So Vishnu, some people who believe in Vishnu as the ultimate god, they say Vishnu is the shape and form of the Nirguna Brahman. Saguna. Saguna means with certain attributes. So that is Vishnu. Or some people only believe in Lord Shiva as being the ultimate God. That ultimate God, Shiva, is Brahman. Or there are others who follow goddess Devi, Shakti, or Durga, whoever, whatever name you call her by. That Devi is Brahman. And then everyone else beyond that is the uh, other subtle objects like the other deities. You can talk about Indra and others. We've discussed in the past. Indra is like a force of nature, lightning, thunder. These are all subtle objects. The Brahman is even subtler than that. Even Indra and all come from the main god, which is Vishnu, if you look at the Puranas. So that's the difference between what the Brahman represents and what the gods represent. In other words, if you are going down the spiritual path, the Bhagavad Gita we are doing, it's a spiritual book. Okay, you're trying to understand the essence behind our gods, and that's spirituality. But when you come to a layman who doesn't understand the spiritual aspects of it, they go to the temple, they pray, they do all these other things. They are religious. So that's a religious aspect of it. Is that making sense? So every Hindu that's going to the temple or doing things, saying this is how we have to do things, it's giving them a way of life. It's giving them a certain direction of doing things, so it benefits them. So that's a way of life, and that's religious aspects of it. Okay. There's another question. What's the difference between Brahma and Brahman? I just explained the Brahman. It does not have any shape or form. What about Lord Brahma? Does he have shape? Does he have form? Does he have four faces? Yeah, yes. So that's the difference. Brahma is just another god who's created the universe as per our Puranas. But that is there because most people don't understand the Brahman. It's not easy for you to understand, for you, me, and all to understand the Brahman. We do our best through various explanations. So that's giving you an idea of the Brahman itself. But there's more to uh, everything beyond the Brahman. We now have to talk about about us. Why do we exist? What is the meaning of life? And what is our relationship with each other, with the universe? So we need to start talking about these things. So we're moving away from the Brahman now. While Brahman is the fabric of everything that you know, there's only Brahman that we've discussed. We need to now start talking about who we are, what we are. And this entire book helps you understand a little more about this. I'll do a few things. I mean, we will be repeating some of these things that I'm talking about in the later chapters, but this will try and help you understand rebirth and few other things. So you, me, and all the beings on this planet, there's a term called Jiva. Okay, so this Jiva is the physical body and the mind and intellect, which we discussed about earlier. So the physical body is the one that decays. If you are aware in science, it does tell that every 7 to 8 years, your cells are completely replaced, which means this physical body is constantly changing. Okay, you, me are not the same physical body that we were a few years ago. We understand who we are because of our mind and intellect. Okay, we still recognize this physical body as being us because of the mind and intellect. Even the mind and intellect are growing. You're growing more and more mature. You understand more things as you grow. That's also changing. Okay, so the body, mind, and intellect, these three are the main components of the jiva that we call. So how do these really work? Before we go on to the next one, I just want to talk to you about this jiva, because number 13, once I read that verse, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So we have this mind and intellect, right? It is a subtle object. Mind and intellect. In English, there is a term called soul or spirit. And it's a very odd terminology because the definition of soul or spirit varies from person to person, varies from uh, place to place, depending on their understanding of the soul. Just for your convenience, I'll still use the term soul, or in this respect, but for us it is the mind and intelligence. And we discuss the mind. Mind talks about, the mind involves the emotional aspects or the feelings, um, your intelligence. It talks more about your thoughts, your ability to differentiate between right and wrong, your ability to think or uh, do some calculations, math calculations, find science, define scientific theories. So there's a lot behind intelligence. So these are two different things uh, as per the uh, Vedic concepts, but they're kind of intertwined. Think about it this way. When you are angry, when you're emotionally upset, intelligence is low. When you have control on your emotions, your intelligence is much higher. You're able to think, you're able to find solutions for things. So they're kind of intertwined, but we have to differentiate between the two, because that is what forms a part of our soul. A really bad word, soul. I mean, it's not really what Vedanta or scriptures define, but I'm trying to give it an English term, which is what's most popular. So this is where we are with the jiva. Again, we need to come back to the terminal. We have to come back to cause and effect. Okay. So why do people do what they do? Why are some people born differently? Why are some people reacting differently to different situations? Why is it that some people see more pain? Why is it that some people have more pleasure? Why are some people making more money? Why are some people not making as much money? Why is it that one person is jealous, the other person is not, for the same situation? Why are you reacting? One person might laugh more than the other. One person might be more serious. Recently, I was talking to Anushka, and she was talking about psychotics. Okay, 1% of the world's population are psychopaths. Why are these people psychopaths? Why then others are very generous with their time? Why are some people really miserable? Why are some people very happy? Why is there somebody who's very stingy or a miser, whereas there are others who are very generous with their time and their money? So all these questions, why is there a difference between you and me? We are all from the same Brahman, but why are we different? Why is there crime? Why is there uh, theft? Why is somebody murdering another person? To this, we need to understand a few other concepts. One other concept, major concept, called karma. I'll start with the concept, but it is quite a deep concept. And I think we are almost time. Yeah, we have very little time, but let me start off with the concept of karma, and then we'll talk a little more in detail next class. Karma is basically action. Okay. So today, you, me, right now we are having a conversation. That's an action in itself. But just like in science, a physical, we all understand that this action and reaction are equal and opposite, right? We understand that, but that's for physical objects. But there's physics even involved with the subtle body or the mind and intellect. That is the soul. I'll explain it in a little detail later, but let me start with an example. Say, for instance, you guys are at school, right? One of your friends decides she doesn't have a pen, so without your permission, she takes your pen, and you're not happy about it. How do you react? You complain about that person. Is that person doing the right thing? Or is that person doing the wrong thing? All of these questions start running in different minds among your classmates. So one person might think, oh, this person did not have a pen. You had a spare pen, so that person took it. Whereas the second person might think, oh, this person is just stealing without even asking for permission. So there's a number of aspects to it. And I think I'm starting to make it very complicated. Let's look at it slightly differently. One of your friends doesn't have a pen and you just give it to them. That's an action. What have you lost? Reaction. You've lost your pen. So that's a physical aspect of it. But then there is another aspect of it, which is called the good deed. Okay. So what you have done is you have given that pen to your friend because she doesn't have it, and that's a good deed. This is called good karma. If you stole the pen from somebody else, that is bad karma. So that's the difference between the two. One is good karma, the other is bad karma. Okay, and there's consequences for both. So the person who stole your pen, in the future, there will be a reaction. What happens? Quite likely they may lose the pen, they may lose their own pen, or somebody might steal from them. That is a possibility. You, on the other hand, you have given the pen to your friend who's lost their pen or who doesn't have a pen. You are generous. At that time, action and reaction on the physical aspect is you're given the pen, the other person has got the pen, you've lost the pen. But the good deed then comes back and helps you when you need it. Okay, so that is karma on the action and reaction aspect of it. But this is a very simplistic explanation. There's a lot more detail which I'll start explaining in the next class. Okay, anyone have any questions about today's class?